Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for, let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking about the best hiking speed when it comes to movement efficiency and energy efficiency. Now, I often get the question from many hikers in asking, what's the best speed I should be hiking on the trail? Or what's the best way I should be hiking on the trail? What's going to be best for me to help me get through longer days more comfortably and get through the miles more comfortably and all in all just sort of survive things, a little bit happier? And it is a fair enough question because you do see a lot of things online where people recommend, walk at this pace or walk at this pace or push these parts of the trail or relax on these parts of the trail. And you see other things of people always recommending this is the best way to walk. You should try this, do this technique and yada, yada, yada. So today I thought I'd do a quick episode diving into this very, very briefly. And it's a really, really interesting subject when it comes to sort of the walking speed specifically. Now, if you were thinking about this or you were sort of going down this area a little bit, I would say, first of all, probably forget about your hiking gait and forget about the way you actually walk. Now, I'm not saying this area isn't important and it can't be beneficial to look at, but when it comes down to this area, 99.99% of people don't know what they're talking about. And they might be given advice that sounds intelligent, that sounds smart, but it's probably not super practical. Now, the reason I say that is when it comes to walking gait and the way you actually walk, there's so many factors which go into this, which people just don't consider. So there's, everyone is a little bit different. Everyone's got different lever lengths, meaning everyone's got different leg lengths and torso lengths. Everyone's different weights. Everyone's got different tightnesses and strengths, and everyone's got all these different things going on in their body. So trying to say there's one particular way where you should be walking is not super practical. And it's not really going to be incredibly beneficial. And I know a lot of hikers have gone down this route and someone said, look, you should be walking like this. You shouldn't be turning out your toes. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. And they obsess on this area. That doesn't really do any different. And I would say 99% of the time, just don't worry about your gait. Just walk whatever feels naturally for you. The only time I would say where it's worthwhile listening to advice when it comes to this is if it is coming from a podiatrist or a physio or a physical therapist, and they specifically identified something going on with your body and they've given you some recommendations. But if it's just some hiker, if it's just a personal trainer, if it's just someone who might be able to see how you're going, but they haven't actually taken the time to assess you or know how to assess you or anything like that, you can probably forget about your gait stuff in all honesty. But one area that you can think about, and it does have some pretty clear and easy to understand areas, is what is the best hiking speed. And when I say best hiking speed, I mean what is the speed that is going to be most energy efficient for you on the trail, meaning that you can walk for longer and longer and longer at this particular speed and you're going to lose less energy. Therefore, you get less fatigued, less exhausted, and typically have a better time. And when it comes down to this, there is a speed which is going to be the best in quotation marks. Now, this information is coming out of this really interesting area of study that we did way back at university when I was back there. And it sort of got brought up in my client group the other day. And it sort of reminded me of this really, really interesting area. And essentially, we sort of looked at this thing when it came to walking speeds and movement efficiency. And what we did, we looked at a few studies where they'd basically gotten a group of people and they've gone to walk at a whole bunch of different speeds. They've done speeds where they've said, okay, you just walk what is completely natural to you. You don't pay attention. You don't think. Just walk whatever you're doing. Walk at speeds, a range of speeds that are quicker than that, a range of speeds that are slower than that. And what they did all this complex stuff to actually measure exactly how much energy they're using when they were going at all these different speeds. And what they found was that for the majority of people going through this study, when they were left to their own devices, and they just walked whatever was natural for them, the body naturally found the speed and self-selected the speed in which they were about 99% the most energy efficient. And this wasn't an exact speed. It wasn't just 5 kilometers an hour or 4 kilometers an hour, whatever it may be. Everyone was different. But what they found for the individual, if they naturally just went at whatever speed was natural to them and they didn't think about it at all, the body typically found this most efficient speed very, very, very well. And this is really, really interesting in the sense that when it comes to sort of the weight loss world, we're always talking about, how to burn more calories and this and that. And the body is very, very good at conserving energy. And when in the weight loss world, if we're talking about walking, you can look at that and say, okay, if I just walk a little bit quicker than what I usually walk or naturally walk, I might burn a few more calories. But when it comes into the hiking world, this is basically saying if you can just walk or hike at the pace that you're most comfortable at, without actually consciously thinking about it, more than likely your body is going to naturally select the best pace for you, which is really fantastic because that sort of frees up a lot of mental space when you're on the trail. You don't have to think about maintaining speeds. You don't have to think about changing things. You just do what feels good for you. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other factors that can go into that on the trail. Things like weather, time commitments, impatience or whatever it may be. Some people may mentally deal better going quicker up hills or slower up hills or whatever it may be. But when we're talking about just the general principle, naturally selecting your pace can be super, super beneficial. But the only drawback to this, in this subject in the hiking world, is this is all well and good when you're actually out by yourself. And you're hiking by yourself because you can naturally do whatever pace is good for you. But when you're in a group, this does get a bit trickier, particularly if your self-selected natural pace might be a little bit slower than other people. And I always hear stories from people who typically go out hiking by themselves. They'll typically go out training by themselves. And then they'll go out with a group or a friend who's a little bit quicker than them. And they just get absolutely shattered. And they end up exhausted. They end up having a terrible day. And not because they've done a hike that's so much more difficult than what they usually do, but they've just been hiking at a speed which isn't efficient for them. So if you are in this situation where you typically train or hike by yourself, but you're aware that in the future you're either going to be going with a group or with a partner, and you're not 100% sure you're going to be the fastest person, then it really, really, really is a good idea to practice with quicker hikers, I should say. So going out in your training hikes with people who are a little bit quicker than you, or even doing intentionally quicker hiking or quicker walking in your training. Because as much as the naturally selected pace is going to be the most efficient, if you can't actually stick to that on the trail and you haven't practiced that, you're going to get yourself into a little bit of a tricky situation. Or alternatively, if you're comfortable, you can sort of say on the trail with this group, you're like, okay, you guys go ahead. We'll meet at this stop if you're aware of where the stops are, if you're prepared and you're confident like that, and you walk at your own pace and stay efficient. That can be another strategy there. But I thought this was a really interesting subject to bring up, and I can't remember whether we talked about this before in the podcast or not. But if you are in this situation where you've got a long hike ahead, one big day, multiple days, weeks, or whatever it may be, and you're not on a particular timeline, self-selecting your pace and just doing whatever feels natural can be a really, really effective strategy to stay efficient, to stay comfortable, and keep that energy going long-term on the trail. So a little bit of food for thought there, and hopefully that does help you clear up a little bit of ideas if you do come across this subject somewhere online or somewhere in your preparations and you want a bit of clarity. So I appreciate you listening today, guys. That's it from me. I hope you got a little bit out of this, and I guess I'll talk to you soon. Bye. You've been listening to the Training for Trekking podcast. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes. So thanks for getting involved, and we'll see you on the next one.